welcome back to Roots and Remedies, a podcast where we explore how to return to our roots in order to become the best versions of ourselves. My name is Latasha, and I am honored to be your orator and guide on this sacred journey and in this healing space. And today, we will be talking about how cultivating our spirit can be used as a tool to help us heal from and prevent burnout. But before we get into today's topic, I would like to first invite us for a moment of breath together. So wherever you are, whatever you're doing, I invite you to take this moment to breathe, to pause, reflect. As we inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. Continue breathing at your own pace as you listen to the sound of my voice. This is for the person that exists, the one I may never have the honor of meeting, but who somehow hears these words. The one in need of a reminder to be grounded in your spirit, to connect to the one that you know as your creator. Your spirit is alive. It is breathing. It deserves your attention too. So here, in this space, may you remember to allow your spirit to play as it wakens up, and remember that it is alive inside of you. Continue to hold on to that truth as you journey back to the core of who you have always been. Continue to breathe at your own pace. Today's episode affirmation is: my spirit is alive and deserves my attention. My spirit is alive and deserves my attention. Take one more nice, deep, cleansing inhale. Exhale. Let it go. So thank you for joining in that moment of breath. Now let's get into the root of today's episode. So today we will be talking about spiritual cultivation and how cultivating our spirit is an important aspect and an important part of our wellness in order to heal and prevent burnout in our lives and on our healing journeys. And before we get too deeply into the episode, I first want to clarify what I'm meaning by spirituality and spiritual practice. Because for me, as someone who was raised in a very strictly Christian home, I was introduced to spirituality through the practice of religion. And I realized that for many of us, that may be the case, right? We may have been born into families that have certain religious practices, and because of that, we then adopted those practices, whether they actually aligned with us in our journey or not. However, what I would like to remind us of is, even though many of us have been introduced to spirituality and our spiritual paths through religion, it is very, very important to remember that our spiritual practice is not only our religion. Yes, religion and faith and having a religious practice that you follow can help cultivate spirituality and spiritual practice. However, when I am referring to spiritual practice and spirituality, I am not referring to religion. Okay. And I want that to be very, very clear. Religion can be a way to cultivate spirituality and spiritual practice. However, it is not the only way. For those of us who may not always resonate with all aspects of our religious practices or religious communities, and for those of us who may never have had any exposure to spirituality and spiritual practice, this episode is for us. So why is this important? Why is this something that we should give our time and attention and focus to? Well, spiritual neglect and neglecting our spirits is one of the ways in which I have noticed that is leading so many of us to burnout. Because we aren't tending to and cultivating our spirits often or with attention and focus, we are just constantly on the go, 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 go. And we are not giving ourselves a moment to refuel and replenish. And spiritual cultivation and cultivating our spirits and making sure our spirits are in alignment gives us that refuel. It helps fills us back up. And so when we go for so long without giving our spirit any attention, any focus, it can really start to add to the weight of burnout and the effects of that. And that can be a big detriment because we are all spiritual beings. We are all spiritual beings navigating a human experience. And we all have the capacity to connect deeper with the one who has created us. And one thing that I've realized is that when we fail to cultivate our spirit, we are also failing to show up and live fully. Because no matter what we believe individually, in some way, shape, or form, we are all just searching for our connection to our divine creator, to the one who has created us. And there are some of us who don't necessarily believe in a higher power, that there's something greater than us. And that's okay. I'm not here to challenge your beliefs or your thoughts. However, I will challenge you to reflect on, what do you believe in? Because we all believe in something, right? And whatever that something is, give that something a bit more of your attention. Allow that something to take up a bit more space in your life. Allow it to fill your body and just ground you back into the authenticity of who you truly are, whatever that is. And on my journey, I was able to cross paths with a lot of different philosophies and religious practices. And I realized that at the core of all religions, all spiritual practices, we are all just simply looking for a way to connect deeper with the divine, with source energy. And this is always an interesting conversation and topic to bring up, because the language around spirituality and spiritual practice can be so vast. Some people like to use the term God. Some people like to say universe, creator, source, divine. And I would like to take this moment to remind us that whatever your language is, just know what the relationship is. Whether you say God or you say universe or you say stars, know what you're meaning. Know what that means to you and your body, right? That may mean something very different to the next person, right? Just know what it means to you so you can connect with your source energy. Because of the usual connection between religion and spiritual practice, there is a decline of spiritual practice and spiritual awareness, where we are not showing up fully in our spirits, especially for those of us who don't align with certain spiritual practices. It sometimes can be, well, you either practice or follow a certain religion or you don't. And in those spaces, I personally don't believe it should be an either or on or off. I believe we have options and choices that help inform our decisions. And this conversation is important because spiritual neglect affects other parts of our lives. Just like if we neglect our physical body, if we don't eat or if we don't hydrate ourselves, our bodies feel it, right? Or if we have too much screen time on our phones or our computers, our minds and our eyes can start to feel it, right? Our spirits are the same way. If we don't take time to cultivate our spirits and do things that refuel us and fill us back up, our spirits can become depleted, and that can lead us on a path to burnout, which is what we're actively navigating away from. So one of the ways that I would like to remind us of how we can cultivate our spirits and come back to ourselves is being out in nature. Go outside, put your feet in the dirt, put your feet in the grass, hug a tree, feel the sunlight on your skin, let the wind and the air caress you. Be outside. We can have a tendency to forget that we are nature. We are nature. The same atoms and molecules and all the things that makes up the air and the earth and the dirt and the water, it's in us. We are made of those same molecules and those same atoms and those same things. We are nature. And when we simply have a moment to be outside, to breathe, to reconnect, to tap back into that source energy, that is when we are able to realign ourselves. And I love nature as a reminder because nature is available to all of us. Nature does not have to be connected directly to a spiritual practice, right? And it goes back again to that concept that spiritual practice does not always have to mean religion. So go outside, be outside, allow yourself to really open back up and let all the energy go that you've been carrying throughout your day, throughout your week. Just allow yourself to kind of lock back in. Another thing that I would like to remind us of when it comes to cultivating our spirit is sitting quietly with ourselves. Sit quietly with yourself. And again, the language for this can vary depending on your own practices and your own beliefs. Some of us may say prayer. Some of us may call this meditation. Some of us may just say, I'm going to sit down, right? Whatever your language for it is, the point is to just sit down and be. Don't do anything. Allow your mind to shut off. Allow yourself to go quiet. Allow the world around you to go quiet. And all you hear is you and the one that created you, right? Allow those moments to really settle in. And I think this is an important reminder because we can sometimes forget that we are divine, right? There is a divine being living and breathing inside of each and every one of us. And when we give ourselves the moment to sit long enough, we can hear the voice and the message from our higher self, and we can allow ourselves to be guided. And when we are guided from that sacred place, things can flow a bit smoother, right? We don't have to waste brain power or brain energy thinking too much about things. We can just allow them to be and allow them to flow. And that's how they go. So sitting with ourselves and allowing ourselves the time to digest and process and hear, to really allow ourselves to hear, to just hear what is already being said. The next tool that I would like to offer us is find a spiritual tribe or spiritual community that has a similar vibe as you. For some, that may be going to your local church or your masjid or your mosque or your synagogue. For some of us, that may be getting a few friends together and having a drum circle outside at the local park, right? It looks different for everyone. However, when you find that spiritual tribe, when you find those people you can lean on in hard times, it makes it feel a little less heavy because you're not carrying the weight of life alone. Not only do you have your source energy and your creator that you are connecting to, but now you have these other people who understand the vibe that you're on, and you can lean on each other during hard times. And when you are with other people, they may have things that they can suggest to you that have worked for them on their journey. And so it's just another way of expanding and deepening the depth of which we are able to explore and expand. The next reminder that I would like to offer us is to seek knowledge. Seek knowledge. And what do I mean by that? I mean, go find different things to connect with. Go explore. Ask questions. One of the things that has not set right with me with many religious practices or religions is the inability to ask questions. sometimes when we have questions, it's kind of shunned, like, oh no, don't ask that. Just follow it. Just go along with it. It's just because. And that doesn't sit right with me. We should be allowed to ask questions. We should be allowed to explore. Curiosity is how we are able to dive deeper into things that mean something to us. And it's how we are able to see what fits with us. So one example of that can be read different spiritual texts. Although there may be a spiritual text that may align directly with your spiritual practice or your belief, there are so many other texts out there that we can read and we can glean knowledge and wisdom from. And I know some of us may not want to explore other texts because we believe that the text that we have and our book is the book that is the right book and no other books are. Listen, there is knowledge and words everywhere. So if we are allowed to open ourselves up to finding those words and that knowledge, that can help strengthen our spiritual practice. And I will say, though, that is not me saying go read any and everything. No, again, it goes back to what we were just talking about of sitting with yourself. Sit with yourself, check in with yourself, check in with your creator, and see what is aligned for you. Because certain things may not be in your spiritual practice to go read, right? So be mindful and use discernment as you are exploring and as you are navigating. But in that space of discernment, you will be able to know. You will be able to tell what lights your spirit up and what fills you up and what kind of depletes you. And that's the reminder, right? Is this path, this spiritual path and the spiritual journey that we are on is a journey. And sometimes we may pick things up and they may vibe with us and we keep them. Sometimes we may pick things up and they don't feel right for our spirit, so we leave them where they lay. And that is okay. That is the process of journeying through and learning how to cultivate the spirit that lives within inside of us, which actually leads us into the book review section of today's episode. Today, the book I would like to focus on and highlight is The 7 Spiritual Laws of Success by Deepak Chopra. The reason I decided to share this book, especially in the context of spirituality and cultivating spiritual practice, is because as I read the book, I appreciated the fact that what was talked about and the laws that were talked about were universal. The law of giving, the law of cause and effect, the law of intentionality and attention, right? These are all things that any of us can apply into our lives, regardless of what religious practices or what spiritual practice we may already have in place. So I really appreciated the book for that aspect. And I appreciated the lens of seeing success as spiritual practice. So reframing our mindset about what success is, what abundance is from a spiritually aligned place in a way that can be easily digestible. And I really appreciated that. And if you are someone who are wanting to seek more knowledge and wanting to go find other texts that may be able to help you on your spiritual path, this book may be one. I know for me personally, as I was reading it, it allowed me to open my mind to things that may seem simple on the surface, but can be very, very easy for us to forget in our everyday lives. And so I personally enjoyed the book. I appreciated that it was broken down into 7 very clear to understand what's called laws, but I more so see them as tools and suggestions and reminders, right? 7 reminders on how we can use spirituality and spiritual practice as a lived example of what success and abundance can be in our personal lives. And I really appreciated that. I also appreciate the fact that these are things that can apply to anyone, regardless of your personal beliefs or your spiritual practices. And those are the things that I really appreciate because for me, again, I do not think religion is the only way to cultivate spirituality. However, when we find and have options that allow for our deep, intentional spiritual practice and for whatever religious practices some of us may have, I think that can be a very potent combination. And for me, this book was that. So check it out if you are interested. And if you do happen to read the book or get the book, let me know in the comments what that experience was like for you and what you navigated through. But before we begin to wrap up, just a reminder that we are spiritual beings navigating a human experience. No matter what your personal spiritual beliefs are, remember to cultivate your spirit. Take intentional time to make sure that the inside of you is aligned and good, so that way you can be that much stronger and show up that much bolder when we go out into the world and face all of the many challenges that we have to face. And for those of you who may be thinking, well, how do I do this? How do I activate this today? How do I navigate this starting today? I just remind you, you can start by getting outside. Go outside. Let the sun grace your skin and be reminded that you come from something greater, and allow that question to really permeate into your being and into your body. And go explore, go get curious, go find new practices, new things that may feel good for you. Allow yourself to find out what feels good. Find out what your spiritual practice is. Find out what nourishes your soul, what brings you back to life. And in that exploration, we can see how we can start to transform the idea of spirit and spiritual cultivation and spiritual practice. It can be transformed from just religion and religious practice into experiencing moments of joy, right? Spirituality and spiritual practice is a moment of joy. And so when we are able to find out and to learn what connects us with our joy, what really lights us up, that is spiritual practice. So I ask you, what brings you joy? What lights you up? And whatever comes to mind, I encourage you to go do that thing this week. But before we wrap up, just a reminder of today's episode affirmation, which is, my spirit is alive and deserves my attention. My spirit is alive and deserves my attention. Because yes, your spirit is alive and it deserves every ounce of your attention in order to heal and sustain itself for the long term. And I hope that you have fun exploring and finding out what that means for you in your life. But for now, may you go in peace, flow in love, and enjoy creating the life that you wish to thrive in. Until our next moment of magic, my friends.